Welcome. This is the podcast series dedicated to living a revenue culture. For those of you who've been in business for a while or have been studying it for a while, you know maximizing profit's tough. And the only way you can maximize profit is first optimize people in a low friction context. So we're going to bring you every 2 weeks, we're going to bring you people who are out there in the real world working on those things, maximizing profit, optimizing people, and creating low friction context. And today we have Gary Schwartz with us. And there's a lot of commonality between Gary's background and mine. So I love the fact he removes silos. He's the founder of What Great Looks Like. And it's amazing how many times people don't even think about what great looks like. So this is going to be a good conversation. He's a marketing, tech, sales, start with why, leader, coach, author who's focused on long-term profitable brands, and he can help you with cybersecurity in an AI world. So on top of that, he thinks like those of us who are part of our revenue science community, because as I said before, he likes to remove silos. So Gary, welcome.
Rick, thank you so much for having me on today. It's really a pleasure to join you.
Well, I'm dying to get into this because there's, you and I were talking off camera. We have so much in common that I think we're going to have a lot of fun. And I think we're going to help people look at things that sometimes they don't really look at. So first, just talk a little bit about your career because your career is quite robust, and some of the things you're going to talk about later, once they understand your career, make a really nice picture.
Oh, happy to do so, Rick. So I've been a sales and marketing leader for B2B software companies for the better part of the last 25 years. And I've worked in a variety of industries, most recently, as you mentioned, cybersecurity. And the funny thing about the industries I've been in, the companies I've worked for, I used to tell people that I'm really lucky that I get to work for these companies with strong social missions because, the not a secret is I'm still the kid that wants to save the world. And it took me a little while before I realized you're not lucky. This is what you seek out. I seek out companies with strong social missions. So cybersecurity really hits on that for me because it's really about frustrating the bad actors so that the rest of us can behave, transact, and live and do the things we want to do without that kind of interference. And speaking of interference, I guess this segues to your point about the silos. If there's one thing that I've seen across my 25-year career in B2B SaaS software, it's the finger pointing that goes on between sales and marketing teams. And you smiled. Everybody smiles when I tell them about this because we all recognize that wherever we've sat in the organization, we all live it. And it starts when the company doesn't make its numbers because most of us were working in high pressure, VC backed, PE backed environments where growth is critical. And the CEO says, what's going on? And the sales leader goes, well, marketing's not giving us enough leads. And the marketing leader responds, wait, we hit our target. You can't close the leads we give you. And of course they're both wrong, right? Both once you start pointing the fingers, and to your point about optimizing for people, you either optimize them or find new people. But what typically happens is the CEO says, "Can't you two just fix this?" As if it's just a personality issue or a communication issue. It's not that kind of issue. They don't fix it, so she replaces them. They don't fix the root cause, and 18 months later, it's lather, rinse, repeat. They're having the exact same conversation. And I've seen that from both sides. I've been a sales leader in companies where marketing operated from what I call the ivory tower. They created messaging for us that didn't resonate. And why? Because they were in their silo. They didn't ask sales, what do you guys hear? Does this work? So it's not a sales is bad, marketing is bad kind of conversation. It's just that there are better ways to align those groups so they focus on the same outcomes they trust one another. You really want to foster those trust collaborative relationships so that they're just aligned on crushing their numbers. Hope that wasn't too long-winded an answer for you.
No, and you brought up a couple of really fascinating pieces, so we're immediately going off plan. Um, when you talked about your purpose, wanting to make the world a better place, wanting to help, and then when we talk about um, marketing didn't create enough leads and sales didn't close enough deals, um, one of the things we talk about on this show all the time is designing our work from the buyer's frame of reference backwards. And when you start talking about wanting to make the world a better place or save the world, that's saving the world for the buyer. And yet, often sales and marketing get caught up on headquarters stuff, and marketing creates this wonderful message that sounds good in the boardroom, but they have no idea how the customer is going to receive it. And sales is really trying to force something onto a buyer, partially because that's what they were given to go do. But they don't start from that buyer's friend that I want to make that buyer's world better. I want to save that buyer. I want to save our community. I want us to be better. So I loved the way you created that contrast immediately. Uh,
Thanks, Rick. I mean, customer obsession is the only way for an organization to succeed because at the end of the day, that's who they're doing it for, right? If they found the problem and it's a problem that affects a group of people, that's their target audience, understanding that customer and I can go, there's so many directions that this conversation can go because at the earliest stages, product market fit is crucial, right? Working with your potential audience, understanding that there's a problem, it resonates with them, that there's a market for it, they're willing to pay for it. All of those things are so critical as you're embarking, early stage in that business, that customer obsession. Then once you understand you've got that product market fit, again, I may be diverging a little bit from your
no,
methodology, but in order to really get the business moving, it needs to focus on its ideal customer profile. And acronyms galore, that's the ICP. But once you've defined that, and early stage companies that are founder led, you've got a founder who saw the problem, is a technologist who's built the solution, who sold it to what I think of as friendlies. These are people that they've
yeah.
had relationships
Oh,
with.
yeah.
But they've got to be careful that they're not only working for their friendlies, because if they don't establish that product market fit beyond them, they'll find themselves being consulting companies for those few friendlies. And so understanding that, but once you've created those relationships and delivered the solutions, now you got a base of people who are willing to share their success. And that forms the foundation of your ICP, right? So that you can be focused in selling to organizations that understand the problem, understand that you understand the problem, that you can solve it, that want to work with you, and that will stay with you for the longer term. Those are the things that go to starting. Then, once the companies are more mature and they start to develop sales and marketing teams, I've spoken to CEOs who were the CRO and the CMO because the company was so small. They were pretty aligned, I have to say. Didn't have any issues with that. But it's then once you've got those separate organizations, they've got to realize that they're partners. And as they both follow that customer obsession, I'll give you one of the best pieces of advice I ever got in my career from a mentor many years ago. He said, if you're not sure what to do, ask yourself what's best for your customer. 90% of the time, that's going to be the right answer.
Yeah, great mentor. So, okay, we all got to know what great looks like. Tell us, where that came from because it sounds like a continuation of this conversation. And what's the definition of it? How do we apply it in the real world? Uh, and I'm sure that's part of your practice on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And the name came from just a recognition that I've been over that period of time in my career, I worked for a handful of different companies. I've seen what bad looks like. I've been part of organizations that crushed it and used these principles. So I've seen what great looks like. And this is what I'm here to help companies do. Starting out one at a time, and as I scale it, well, multiple at the same time. But it starts, I talk a lot about alignment. I know you talk a lot about alignment as well. And alignment can mean many, many different things. And the place where I see that mismatch, it starts with the story I told earlier about arguing about leads. Leads are not outcomes. Leads are a path to an outcome. And so if marketing is judged on leads, it's not being judged on an outcome that it delivers to the business. Sales is judged on very, very clear outcomes. You got a quota. You hit your quota or you don't. Leads can be shown in depending on the methodologies and depending on how you just determine what leads are,
Mhm.
right? They will convert towards outcomes. So you've got to measure it. You've got to measure activities. You've got to measure what's going on to get you there. But the place that I've seen it done the best, where I've been a part of the success, was a Series A startup in the ed tech world. Very, very strong social mission. And I was the first head of marketing. We hired the first head of sales about a month after I joined. And I, and our CEO were very, very aligned on using OKRs rather than what I call the vanity metrics, leads being one of those vanity metrics. And I told the CEO, this is what you should judge me on and my marketing team on. How many opportunities are we creating for the sales team? Because that rolled up directly into the company OKR, which was a revenue number. That company had two OKRs, the revenue number and how many people were benefiting from our product in the early days. I know they've added one or two. I've spoken to other companies that have hundreds of OKRs. Well, here's a secret. If you got 100 OKRs,
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
have any.
Yep.
So what we did is we aligned on the most important outcomes that we were delivering for the business. And to me, that's a starting point. And then what we did was we structured the organization to support that alignment. And what I mean by that, in a lot of B2B software companies, you've got your sales reps, let's call them, again, I'm going to go with alphabet soup here, AEs, which are your account executives. Largely, they're the closers. They work the
Mhm.
opportunity, they go to close the deal. And then you've got whether you call them BDRs, business development reps, or SDRs, sales development reps, they are often the openers. And what they will do is react to inbounds that come in. I call those hand raisers. That's a
Yep.
different kind of lead. That's someone
Yep.
who explicitly says, I want to talk to you. And then they will do some outbound outreach. Now, in most of the companies I've been in, those people, the SDRs, lived in the sales organization. Now, because they're waiting for inbound leads, that perpetuates the
Yep.
whole conversation about, well, we're not getting enough leads. But we sat them in my marketing organization. The other thing that we did with them is we didn't pay them to generate meetings. It's sort of a similar conversation. If you pay me to generate leads, I'm not saying I would do it, but a marketing leader could say, well, we'll lower the threshold. So we'll give you thousands of leads, but your quality is going to go down. It's the same thing if I compensate a person for setting meetings.
Yep.
They may not set quality meetings. So what we compensated our SDRs on was opportunities that were generating from the meetings that they set. And the catch was the sales rep was the one who determined whether it was a qualified opportunity or not. Now, the pushback was, well, I can't control what the sales rep does. And my response back was, talk to them, learn from them, find out what they're looking for, and you will hit your target more quickly. And what that does, it creates a mentor mentee relationship, a bigger alignment. And it also creates a career path for those SDRs who want to be salespeople when they grow up. So doing those three things, I'm not saying that's all that we did because we were
Right.
customer obsessed and storytelling and a lot of other things that we did, but just structurally, we created alignment between our sales and marketing teams where they needed one another to hit the outcomes that we needed to deliver for the business. The sales leader and I and the CEO, we never, ever, ever talked about leads. We only talked about opportunities. And the side benefit of that was that for my marketing team, well, anytime anyone asked them to do stuff, can you do a campaign for this? Can you do a campaign for that? They had the authority and the accountability to ask, well, how's that going to generate more opportunities for us? How's that aligned to our OKRs? And we also eliminated the busy work that disrupted people. So everything we did was aligned on creating, for marketing, was creating opportunities for sales to go hit their revenue targets.
One of the things I love about that story, because alignment's hard. And sometimes it's hard because nobody ever decided what it means. But even when they do decide what it means, it can be hard if the people involved don't view the mission the same. Uh, and we use the term fulfillment. If I don't feel fulfilled by what you're asking me to be aligned with, I'm going to be marginally successful or helpful or constructive. So we try and encourage people to hire people who are fulfilled by being a team member focused on, that one OKR that you had. And, because if that doesn't fulfill them, you're never going to get 100% of their effort.
Oh, totally agreed. And I think that is a function of leadership. Leadership's job, my view, is to set that bar and set that vision, right? This is our, and it's not, these, oh, here's our purpose statement and here's, but this is really what the good that we are looking to put into the world.
Yep.
And that comes from the top. That comes from the CEO and from the executive team. And then that next step down, the C-suite, is here's how we're going to execute on that vision. And their job, my job as a head of marketing, is to hire people that are better than I am at all their individual tasks, get them on the vision, and let them do their job.
Yep.
And I think part of what you described as being purpose driven is also a function of people who don't feel micromanaged, who feel like they're respected as experts in what they do and can then just go run after it. And of course, everything is defined by are we hitting our outcomes? Are we hitting our objectives? But I start with the presumption of, I hired you because you're an expert, you're a good person, you want to succeed, you're a grown up. Show me that that's correct and we're great. Show me that that's not correct, we'll have different conversations. But benefit of the doubt goes to the new hire because why else did you hire them?
Yep. So as you explain what great looks like to your clients or to your clients' teams, how do you help them not only kind of get a picture of it in their mind, but deploy it and execute it?
It's really all about that focus that we're here to help you achieve the outcomes that you've said you want to achieve. And so what I offer clients is an assessment. It's an assessment of their go-to-market motion.
Mhm.
It's largely through the lens of marketing. There are 6 pillars that we look at. We'll look at product marketing, demand gen, brand, customer marketing, operations, and organization. Largely, we've talked about organization, but a lot of the rest of that is execution, even, product market fit, ICP, that all sits in the product marketing side. And based on that assessment, I'll build an action plan that will allow them to fill the gaps. And I always do that through here's what you can achieve in the next 30 to 60 days, because everybody looks for quick wins. And then here's how we need to be thinking about this over a longer period of time. And the other thing is I try to make sure clients understand I'm not here to criticize you. I'm not here to make anybody look bad. I'm here to make everybody look good because at the end of the day, that's really what we're all trying to achieve. And if I can make you look good and you're doing your job well and you're succeeding and hitting your outcomes and the company's hitting its outcomes, that's good for all of us.
Yeah. Um, Along that line, one of the questions I started asking 2 or 3 years ago when I speak is, and I normally get to speak to CEOs, and I started asking them the question, how much time or how many times in a week do you intentionally, consciously think about how you are going to transfer value to your ideal buyer that they'll actually pay you for? And as of yet, I haven't found a single CEO that thinks about that once during a whole week. And you said it earlier that the buyer's the one who gets to tell us if what we do is cool or not, and they get to define how much whatever it is we do is worth to them. And how do you help people consciously focus on transferring value to the buyer that the buyer is going to say, "Where have you been?"
It's a really good question, Rick. And I think sometimes even CEOs get stuck in the weeds. I've got this problem. We're working on this thing. We're working on this now. But the CEO should really be thinking 2 to 3 years out. Their executive team should be thinking a year out, and the executive team should have hired the folks that are working on the current problems, right? And so, I mean, I know that's aspirational. It doesn't always work out that way, but that's really, I think, where companies, from a certain stage really should be how their teams should be thinking. Because I, as a marketing leader, if I'm not thinking a year out, it's going to be a big surprise when I get there, right?
Yeah.
And that creates problems if that were the case. So I think it is often couched in, do you have the right objectives for the business? Do you have the right outcomes you're looking at? Are you focused? It's that customer obsession, right? A lot of times the answer to those questions, like I said earlier from my mentor, are what's the best thing for the customers? And it's probably surprising in how many different sort of arcane areas, even if you're looking at accounting and finance, I'll bet you can ask that question and answer it from the customer's point of view. And I talk about this a lot, because a lot of software companies make it really hard for customers to buy from them. I've been at companies where customers had to jump through hoops to prove that they were sufficiently qualified to get to see what the product does, to get that preview of how the product can work for them. And always be thinking about, how do I make it easier for customers to understand what we do, to understand our why, to kind of, I don't think we've talked about that yet here, but I know you and I are both big disciples of Simon Sinek and his Start With Why methodology. Understand why we do is why what we do is important to them, and reduce the barriers, make it easy for people to buy from us, make it easier for people to interact, to engage with us. And you'd be surprised how many companies don't do that well. You probably wouldn't, but I think a lot of the listeners might be.
Yeah, one of the things that, and we're going to go to the why in just a second, but one of the things that we found a number of years ago is an easy way to reset some people's thinking, and that is to be conscious of, are you trying to make money from your customer or with your customer? And when you force yourself to answer that multiple times throughout the day, it tends to put you on a consistent track.
It's funny. I would almost continue that and say, am I trying to make money for my customer? Right. And not everybody buys in order to have an ROI on their purchase. Not every product is, that's appropriate for. But in many cases, that's going to be a strong argument. You should buy my product because we're going to help you make more money. We're going to help you save money. We're going to solve a big problem that exists in your business, and that should have a financial impact. So how am I going to make money for my customer? And then that becomes a good thing for my business if I can do that. It's not the only reason to be customer obsessed, but it is a big one. It's a part of that. Why us? Why uniquely from others who compete in our space.
Yeah. Well, and it's, you talked about the preview part earlier. When you help the buyer preview what their experience will be like with you, the buyer includes the emotional, I'm at less risk, or I'm more confident, or we're better collaboration as a unit. And the buyer is able to attach ROI to that, even though we as outsiders have a hard time attaching an ROI to those
Yeah.
fluffy things. But the buyer immediately knows how they'll impact turnover or disengagement or burnout or some of the other problems that they're experiencing.
100%. And that's why focusing, getting the right product market fit, understanding and working with those customers to share their stories is fundamental to that because, I don't even think it's a secret. Customers don't want to hear from vendors. Customers want to hear from their peers. And there's a whole other conversation around customer advocacy programs. I've been in companies, in fact, I've been a buyer as a marketing leader. I've bought a ton of marketing software. And I can't tell you how often the vendor will tell me, we'll give you a discount if you'll do a testimonial for us. And what they've done without really knowing is they've created their customer advocacy program as transactional
Yeah,
and they set an expectation. And the way that I approach advocacy is to understand that my customer or some percentage of my customers, they want to look good. They want to get their next promotion at work, or they want to get their next job, or they just want a shout out. They want peer recognition. And so I never ask for favors, but I would say to you, Rick, can I give you a platform to share your success? And we'll do that in the way that's most comfortable for you, because not everybody can do a press release. Not everybody can
right.
get on a stage, but let me help you share your success. And when you approach it from that way, you're building a relationship. It's not based on what's good for me. It's always based on what's good for you. And those people will do they'll go above and beyond to support you. And as long as they see that you'll go above and beyond to support them too.
Yep, I love it. So let's change. You and I know we're going to talk about why, how, what today. So
Yeah.
let's do that now. One of the things that the literature is full of, as far as research, that today, particularly in the work you and I are used to, B2B, uh, enterprise type, complex type selling, we never have just one buyer's mind in a transaction. And the last research I saw was 7.65 buyers are in every enterprise transaction, not even with a big company. There
It,
could
it's
be
it's
75
more
of them in there someplace.
totally it's more than that with larger enterprises for sure.
Because today you always have compliance and security and legal and finance and procurement. That's five, and they don't care a thing about what you're selling. They just have a checklist responsibility. And so
100%.
as we look at what it takes to sell that kind of organization, uh, I certainly from my research, it changes the role of the selling organization to one of facilitation and being a partner with that buyer group. And when I think about doing that, and I think of the however many buyers there are, the only common word across all those buyers that because of their silos, the only word they all understand is price.
Mm,
Almost every other word you use, each silo has a different definition of it. So, as a salesperson, my job becomes how do I facilitate all these people they're brilliant people and they have important jobs, but how do I all get them on the same page so I can help them preview what their world is going to be like when they go down a different path they haven't been down before? And the why, how, what to me is the map for doing that. Does
Yeah.
that
The,
fit in your world?
oh, absolutely. And you're totally right that the size of the buying committee, the composition of the buying committee, in fact, the fact that there is a buying committee has changed. 10, 15 years ago, I could buy Marketo because I
Yeah.
had the budget all by myself. This is what we're going to do. And I mean, those days are gone, right? And so it starts, in my experience, with the people who are going to benefit directly from the product. And even that can be multiple components. And
Mhm.
with the last cybersecurity vendor I was with, the CISO, the security team, were the ones who often funded it and benefited from the value the product provided, which was a lowered risk or a better security posture. And 10, 12 years ago, they were the buying committee. But interestingly, the users of that product are the developers. And so developer experience, the security folks could say, mandate, we're buying this product, you have to use it. But if developers aren't bought in, and they could, in effect, veto it, you wouldn't get adoption and you were not going to get your renewal, right? And remember, longevity is a key part of what I was talking about earlier in
Yep.
creating your ICP. And so you have to be able to convince the various people who will either be using the product, benefiting from the value, and as I just described, it may not be the same group in the organization. And you've got to convince them all, and there may be friction among those groups, right? If security says you must use this, and developers say we don't want to use this, we want to use a different tool, they've got their own friction that has to be overcome. But helping them understand why, and they each have different reasons. And so this isn't an acronym, but we call this persona research, right? Understanding who the different people in the buying committee are. Each of them represents a different persona. Understanding what their why is,
Yep.
creating messaging that addresses that for them. And to further complicate things, most buyers today don't even want to hear from a vendor until they're ready, until they got their short list and they're ready to start the conversation, which means that you as a marketing and sales organization oftentimes don't know who your next buyers are going to be. And this conflicts with the last 20 years of selling, which
Oh
is
yeah.
let's just get a list and let's do a brute force cold calling on them. And if you were to do that today, you're more likely than not just going to antagonize people who might have put you otherwise on their short list. And so understanding the right time to reach out, depending on where they are in their buying journey. Now, that can be, we're not in market, we're not looking for this type of problem. So you pretty much leave them alone to, well, we're researching the space. We want to understand, we think we got a problem. We want to learn more about this problem. Then they graduate to, let's see who the vendors are in the market and let's understand how they rank
Mhm.
compared, relative to one another to, okay, here's our short list and we're ready to start making decisions. Well, there's technology available today that allows you to understand where different organizations are
Yep.
in that journey. And if you reach out to them at the appropriate time with the appropriate content, right? So if I'm researching the space, don't try to get me to talk to a salesperson today, but share with me some content that gives me information
Yep.
about this space, about the problem, and start to get to that why. I know we're a little way from the why, but this is really important because of the way buyer behavior has changed more recently. And then when I'm more into the looking at the different competitors, and you can tell by what they're looking at on your website where
Mhm.
they are in their decision-making process. Let's do some outreach that helps them where they are. Then by the time they get to saying what their short list is, you're increasing the odds that you're going to be one of those first vendors they reach out to. And I'm trying to remember the data that I have seen. 70% of companies know who their short list is before they reach out to any vendor. And 84% of the time, the first vendor they contact is the winner
Yep.
before you even know that they're looking. So it's critical to communicate that why, but for each of the different people in the buying group so that you start to build their alignment earlier on in the process.
Well, and I'm I'm assuming since they're going to do most of their research without you, that whether you're the technical buyer or the financial buyer or the process owner buyer, you want the why they want you as part of your message. Otherwise, you end up with a feature war. And
Well,
so you always have to lift the conversation up to the level of the purpose for acquisition, not just the transactional details.
100%. And the way that I try to explain that to my teams is we need to communicate that we understand your problem, that we know how to solve your problem, and that you're going to love working with us. And that we understand your problem. That's the why. That starts to be the why, right? Why? What's our purpose? Why do we
Yep.
exist? Because we understand there's a problem, and we've solved that. And you get people at that gut level because that's also why uniquely us. Why are we
Yeah.
different?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And that's true of what I do and what great looks like. My approach to removing those toxic silos is not an approach that I see a lot of people in my space
Right.
leveraging. So that's my why. That's what makes me unique and allows me to engage in conversations that allow me to help businesses get to what they don't look at, I need to remove my silos. They look at, I need to hit my sales targets.
Yep.
And, but my observation over the course of my career is that that is something that really holds people back from being able to do that. But my purpose is we're going to get you to crush your numbers. And so it's really the same thing. Any organization, whether you're selling cybersecurity software or marketing automation software, um, or customer experience software, you need to be able to clearly articulate why what you do solves their problem in a different, better, and more unique way. And that applies to everyone on the buying committee. It's complex to get all of that messaging done, but it's crucial because they're going to look for it.
Oh, yeah, I am. One of the things I'm assuming is part of the conversation is explaining the difference between this first transaction and the long-term relationship. Because what you buy today absolutely has to connect to your tomorrow. So that you need to think about today's purchase in relationship to the next 3 to 5 years, particularly if it's a technology buy. But any kind of solution buy, whatever you buy today, hopefully it's an easy progression to where you want to go next.
And that's why articulating your product vision is so important in making these kinds of transactions. And that's why, companies do quarterly product roadmap updates for customers. Again, that customer obsession, we want to let you know. And this is not just, again, us in our silo thinking we know where things are going. This is us working with our customers to understand how their needs are evolving while our product is evolving. And whether we build it, whether we buy it, it's ensuring we understand and we're aligned together with our customers where the market for this technology is moving. And we will continue to be at the forefront.
Well, and
And when you
that,
look at analyst reports, vision and where the company's going in the future is a key component of being placed in the right quadrants.
yeah, yeah. Well, and when you do a product roadmap, uh, matching the buyer's needed outcomes and the buyer's purpose to the technology taking them there isn't always obvious to buyers. So part of the seller's message needs to be we have this roadmap because we understand where you're trying to get to and the things you're trying to accomplish. And here's how that goes together.
Yeah, 100%. And some customers they might be ahead of you, they may be there with you, and some will be happy that you're looking at this on their behalf, right? But it's important to communicate that in either case.
Yep. Yep. So let's talk a little bit about, because you have a broad background, and you don't look at just tactical problems. You look at issues and opportunities that are larger. What do you see the trends are that we should be paying attention to?
Well, we've discussed one of the biggest ones, which is the changes in buyer behavior. Um, and it has incredible implications for how sales and marketing organizations have operated over the past 15, 20 years since the beginning of marketing automation tools. And the big one, in my opinion, is I want to be controversial here, Rick. It's the death of the MQL. Um, the MQL, or the marketing qualified lead, has been the linchpin of the marketing and sales engine for a long time. And it came into being when marketing automation software that tracked people's engagement with your message was invented. We could see how many people are on the website, how many pages did they visit, who's opening our emails, what are they clicking on, what content are they looking at, what PDFs are they downloading, who's filling in forms, and the market, and even who's meeting us at events. You could take offline
Yeah.
activities and
Mhm.
put them into this scoring system. And back in the day, there was no other way to measure marketing performance. And this is another big reason why what I say is a little bit controversial, because, the CFO relies on how much are we spending and how much is it producing, which bits of spend are producing these magical, mystical MQLs. And the way that the system worked was that the marketing team would agree that a certain level of engagement, we created these incredible scoring systems where if you downloaded our big white paper, you got 10 points. And if you visited the web page, you
Yeah.
got 1 point, and all weighted in different ways. And there was a magical threshold. And that threshold, when you hit that threshold, boom, you're a marketing qualified. And that meant we handed you over to sales. And those finger pointing things we were talking about
Yep.
before, a lot of those we would say, well, do we need to lower the threshold and get you more MQLs? And
Yeah.
sales
Right.
will go, but the quality's not there. And I'm like, well, what do you want? Quality or quantity? And they said, we want quality. And said, well, let's keep the threshold. But the thing is, that threshold existed because we assumed that that was enough engagement to
Right.
determine that you were an active buyer. And the myth held for a very, very long
Yep.
time. But we've reached a point where it simply doesn't pass muster any longer. For one thing, that person who can be really, really engaged could be a junior researcher who's been asked by the senior team, go learn about this. That doesn't mean they're buying, right? That could mean that they are still in those early stages that I was talking about of intent. So the biggest trend is that the whole system of MQLs no longer works. And that has big implications because it means companies have to think about how do we understand the ROI of our marketing spend. And ABM, another acronym for you, account-based marketing, really is, again, tied to understanding our ideal customer profile. Which companies do we want to sell to? How can we understand whether those companies are in an active buying motion based not on the one or two people who filled in a form, but on those 80 or 90
Yeah.
people you were talking about earlier who are probably all over your website? And then how do we create, with technology that's available today, systems that allow us to understand, well, this company's here in their journey, this company's getting ready to buy. And
Mhm.
then how do we align again? Because that alignment of sales and marketing because it could be for very large strategic accounts. You don't want SDRs. You want strategic sales reps to be doing the outreach. And for different levels, you do want the SDRs. How do we align all of our teams so that we're reaching out to people in the appropriate way based on where they are in their buying stage?
Mhm.
And I think that the vendors that understand that the fastest they'll be able to exploit, which is in effect a market inefficiency, because they'll be going after those customers in a way that's going to encourage all the things that we've talked about, the relationship
Yep.
building, the buying behavior. The companies that don't, the companies that continue to do things the old school way are going to lose disproportionately to the companies that do things in this new way. And I think there's a big opportunity now for the early adopters to find a different way to align their go-to-market teams. Let's think of it as one go-to-market team so that
Yeah.
they can crush their numbers. And to me, Rick, that's the biggest trend that we are in the middle of right now in B2B SaaS.
Wow. Very interesting. Very interesting. Uh, okay, just for time, the last question I want to ask you um, is what advice do you have for new people coming into the business? And we need new people who like the revenue part of the business, sales, marketing, product development, because there just isn't enough of them, and all this innovation and creativity is, just exploding. And then also, what advice do you have for leadership so that you don't squander those, bright young people that could be our future?
100%. The first thing is culture comes from the top. And so an aligned leadership team is going to create aligned teams within their organizations. And those are teams that collaborate. That example that I gave earlier with that ed tech company where we built
Mhm.
that, I was talking with my sales counterpart daily, and we weren't always meeting, right? But we texted, we were communicating constantly, and with our CEO, and we didn't agree on everything, but we talked everything out, and we got to a place where we were aligned. Our teams saw how we behaved together, and that became their de facto way to behave together. And so the message to the more junior folks that are coming in is that we're not in a world where sales is from Mars and marketing is from Venus. Um, we each have our strengths and we are very interdependent on one another to
Yeah.
get to where we want to get to. And that means if you're a marketing person, if your job is to create messaging, well, spend some time with the people who talk the most to customers. Talk to your sales reps, talk to your sales engineers, because whether you call them solution engineers, solution architects, they're the ones who the customer perceives as the one who's there to solve their problem.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who invariably get the truth from
Yeah.
prospective customers. Talk to those people, test your messaging, test your thinking with them before you make it public. And you'll achieve two things. One, you'll end up with better messaging that's aligned with your market. But two, you will create that cultural feeling that, you know what, the marketing guys are working with us. You'll get buy-in from the sales organization, which means that they are going to be consistent in delivering the message that you've worked together to create. And it's the same thing on the sales side. As you hear things, as you learn new things, don't just share it with your sales colleagues, because I've also been in those organizations
Yeah.
where marketing didn't deliver what we needed and we made it up and we shared with our peers, and the message never got back to marketing, which just exacerbated the problem. Realize that everybody is there to learn from each other, maintain that customer obsession, that customer focus, and you'll find you're going to be working in an organization it's fun to work with, because the silos, the blame game, the toxicity, it's no fun. So focus on building those trust relationships across the organization, not just within your own team. And I think you'll find a lot more fun and a lot more success. And in my experience, fun, success, compensation, those are aligned too. Where I find the fun and the success, the other things follow.
Amen. Gary, this has been great. Um, is there any one last thing you want to leave us with?
I think, I mean, yeah, first of all, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think the main thing is maintain that focus on your customer. I'm going to go back to what my mentor told me a long time ago. If you're not sure what to do, ask yourself, what is best for your customer? And that's going to guide you to the right answer.
Excellent, excellent. Well, this has been wonderful. Heck, we may need to do this again in 6 months or so. I think there's still plenty of territory we haven't covered, and we could keep going. So thank you. And I thank everybody for being here today. This is the exact purpose for this podcast on living a revenue culture. Hopefully, you can see in our conversation today the power to lead you to maximize your profit comes from the optimizing your people in a low friction environment. And I think that was the conversation today. So, Gary, thank you again.
Thanks very much, Rick. It's been a pleasure.